today we are going over obviously the best ways to grow your list for a strong Q1. That name, I realized like after we kind of put everything out, it kind of was a little misinforming because I didn't want to stick to strictly email lists, which is obviously also why we have Jumper here today, because you still have Messenger bot subscribers, you have social media followers, and soon you're gonna have obviously phone numbers that you can collect for SMS. So basically any way to grow your list of people that you could potentially reach. Obviously in Q4, it's a big thing, but we want to help you take that from Q4 and move into Q1. This is not really a Q4 prep online webinar thing that we're doing right now, because if you're looking to prepare for Q4 now, you are way too late, and I'm not here to help you because I would just give up on that. So my name is Andrew Maffetone. I put Andrew Maff because my last name is really long, so I just stopped putting that there. I'm the Director of Marketing Operations here at Seller's Choice. We are a full service digital marketing solution provider for e-commerce sellers. And I use all three of these lovely software programs with all of our clients, which is why I wanted to have you guys on today. So I will let each of you kind of introduce yourselves. So why don't we start off with Jumper over in Nia.
Hey, hi, I'm Nihat, and I'm the co-founder of Jumper. So Jumper essentially is a conversational commerce platform. Like brands have, we spoke about how not to spam the platform, but messaging serves as a very good platform for users to actually come and ask questions and kind of interact with the brand. And we offer a platform to not just engage with the brand, but also to be able to take orders and then automate your marketing within it.
Beautiful. Josh.
Sure. So my name is Josh Mendelson. I head up marketing at Privy. If you're not familiar with us, we help hundreds of thousands of online sellers grow their email list and other types of lists. We'll talk about that later. Through things like pop-ups, banners, bars, all sorts of on-site displays. And then, whether you're using our native email platform or using something more advanced like a Klaviyo, we'll help you get all that information wherever you need it to go.
And last but not least, Chris.
Hi everyone, my name's Chris. I'm the inbound marketing manager here at Klaviyo. At Klaviyo, I'm responsible for SEO and conversion rate optimization for our website. If you're not familiar with Klaviyo, I like to describe us as an email marketing automation platform. Now SMS automation platform, as Josh mentioned as well. We focus a lot on e-commerce, but we're branching out into other verticals as well. So we make it really easy to integrate your Shopify store, Magento store, BigCommerce store, WooCommerce, any type of e-commerce store that you have, so that you can use your data from these platforms inside of Klaviyo to send more targeted and personalized communications to your customers.
And that is our group of panelists today. So of course, per standards, we're going to have a Q&A at the end to kind of really hammer through some of the longer questions that we may have. But obviously, like I mentioned earlier, please send them throughout the entire webinar. We want to make sure that we get them while we're on a certain topic. And then of course, what is it we're going to go about today? So I mentioned earlier, this isn't necessarily Q4 prep. It's really about how you can kind of prep for Q1, which is usually not a hot topic. However, Q4 can really help you start to snowball your next year and make sure that your year over year is going to improve. So obviously we'll be going through different email marketing tactics. We'll be going through messenger tactics. We'll be going through pop-ups and any kind of gated content or tripwires that you can set up or anything like that to make sure that you're gathering as much data and as much emails or SMS or messengers, subscribers or anything like that for Q4 while traffic is high, so that you can actually leverage and improve that for next year. So we all know that Q4 is the best time, to collect data, email list, social following. You guys can all read it, so I'm not going to read it to you. But this is kind of what we wanted to talk about, is like, this is the bigger time of year. We all know that, and it's not for everyone. We know that not everyone is a big Q4 seller. Some people have seasonality over the summer or in the spring or anything like that, but we wanted to kind of leverage this one because either way, whether you're seasonal in a different time of year, you still are going to see a pretty decent increase in traffic. And we want to make sure that there's ways for you to leverage that this year. So that's kind of what we're going to go over today. And really what my role is, I have no right to sit on this webinar and talk about, great email marketing tactics or great Privy tactics or pop-up tactics or messenger bot tactics, because normally I would love to do that, but that's why I brought everyone else here today. So I'm just going to kind of touch on how it is that we here at Seller's Choice kind of have them all talk together, and then I'm going to allow everyone else here with Chris, Josh, and Naya to go through the best practices of each of their platforms. But so obviously we want to focus a little bit more on the automation side. So with us, we're kind of like an outsourced marketing department. However, this is obviously something that you can take in-house as well, whether it's collecting emails through different pop-ups, you're setting up different automated processes, you're putting different kind of personalizations into place. That's kind of where a lot of this stuff starts to come into play. So really what we do is we actually use Klaviyo as more of the machine that helps us leverage everything else around it. So I kind of put together this little map here. And for anyone who's like doing screenshots or anything like that, I'm going to send all the slides out, so you don't have to worry about that, so you guys can focus. Or I even know that some of you are listening right now, but not actually watching. So if you have like 2 seconds, come over back to the screen real quick and take a look at this. But essentially what I mapped out here is kind of how we utilize these 3 platforms. So basically we have, all of your top of funnel traffic will normally be off to the left there, but it's driving to a homepage or a product page or a landing page or anything like that. What we usually have is just your standard preview pop-up, right? So 10% off for joining us, or sign up for a newsletter, or anything along those lines. Again, some of the more fancier stuff I will let Josh touch on there. But what I set up here is kind of what I like to, I kind of call them like one of our biggest case studies, is just because it's such a large project that we put together. But we work with a client who sells collegiate apparel. So it's a ton of different colleges that sells different like sweatshirts for schools, and like, Notre Dame t-shirts and Yale hats and things like that. So what we wanted to do was set up his website and his whole process where we're actually piggybacking off of the college's brand awareness and not creating his own, because in reality, he's never going to compete with, the NFL.coms or the Fanatics or anything like that. So what we do is we drive all the traffic to the homepage or product page, whichever, and we have a normal preview pop-up that's kind of a general statement. So for this time of year with football, it doesn't have a specific college uniform on or anything like that. It's just kind of a stock imagey looking thing, but that's what we have set up. And once someone sets that up, they go over to Klaviyo, which then sends them an automated email, which is now sending them that coupon. I always make them go through the email just so that I can make them open an email, because then they're more likely to open it next time. That email with the discount will obviously send them back to the product page, which sends them to a thank you page. But once they purchase, I now have more data on them. I have their state, I have their address, I ideally would have their phone number now. And then, of course, I'm going to know what product they purchased, which in this case was a specific college. So now what I'm doing is I'm utilizing Klaviyo, and I'm actually setting up different segmentations of the different colleges. So I can now collect those and connect those to my Facebook ads, which will run ads to ideally be set up through a Jumper Messenger of a specific college. So I went to UCF, so I'm going to use that as an example. So let's say I purchased a product that was from UCF. It would go into Klaviyo, which would then create a segment that now every ad I see and every pop-up that I see that I set up through Privy on the website is going to be a UCF related pop-up. It will be a UCF related Facebook ad, and it will be a UCF related workflow that I set up through Jumper as I'm starting to set them through the funnel in case I want to try to get them to convert on Facebook as opposed to going over to the website. But the reason we do this, at least for this specific client, was because one day I got a newsletter for one of our competitors, and I was like, this is a great deal, but I'm not buying this because I don't like that team. So I skipped over it. I was like, wow, if that was simply just branded towards me, I would have actually purchased. So what we've done is we've actually leveraged Klaviyo, Privy, and Jumper to personalize everything with kind of we basically utilize Klaviyo as that data center and have essentially set up everything around it to be personalized. Of course, we're still using Klaviyo as well for like the workflows and all the 500 different email automated flows that you can set up, but I'll let Chris touch on that. So this is kind of how we set up that whole automated process of how we've used all 3 of these platforms together, and then how we can actually leverage to offer the customer a more personalized experience. Now, by doing that in today's theme, this is how we have actually been able to gain more emails. I am more likely to get an email from someone in this second half here where it's more college related because they're more personalized and they're not crazy weird personalized, like those weird pop-ups where like you show up and it's like, hi, Andrew, welcome back. Like that can get creepy. But this, when you're just catering to that simple school, has always shown us a much higher conversion rate. So that is where I let Chris take over.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Andrew.
Yep.
So when looking at customers that I've both consulted with on an individual basis and also just looking at customers that use Klaviyo and are very, very successful with our platform, I kept coming back to the same theme, which is the customers that are very successful are really good at always delivering value. So that's kind of the theme of my piece today is what delivering value means and how you can do it as consistently as some of the most successful customers that I've seen and worked with. So when I say delivering value really starts the moment somebody first arrives on your website, and it continues in every email or communication that you send to them after they subscribe. And it's important to remember that all it takes is one bad experience, whether it's a bad website experience like Andrew mentioned, like the creepy pop-up, or a really, unpersonalized email that it takes for somebody to unsubscribe and, kind of cut ties with you at that point. So that's one of the biggest reasons that delivering value is so key. Some important questions that you want to ask when you're deciding if this email is going to be valuable to your recipient is, first of all, would you want to receive this email? And if the answer is no, then chances are that the customer that you're sending it to won't want to receive it either. Are they expecting this email? And what I mean by that is, first of all, did they opt in or consent to receiving the email from you? If no, then due to canned spam and other reasons, you probably shouldn't have sent that email to them. If it's somebody that might have purchased from you 3 years ago that you haven't communicated with ever since, or it's not really a timely or a relevant email to them, then chances are you probably wouldn't want to send it. Have they engaged with similar content? So for example, if I'm on your website and I'm looking at men's t-shirts and shoes and such, then you might not want to send me an email about women's apparel, for example, because it's not really relevant to what I was looking at on the website. Will your recipients be better informed, more knowledgeable, or happier after reading the email? And lastly, does the email address a need, want, or problem that your reader experiences? And if the answer is no to any of those questions, then you might want to either reframe the content in the email or just segment a little bit differently so that you can answer yes to all those questions for everybody who would be receiving the email in that segment. So next I'm going to go into just a quick stat. So 1.75 is the average number of email addresses that most people have, not including their work email address. So take a second and think about how many email addresses you personally have. I know that myself, I've got 2 emails that I use for pretty much everything. One is my Gmail, which is my main email. That's the email that I have set up on my phone. And I use that for all whenever I buy something, whenever I sign up for an account someplace. And then I have a Hotmail email address that I set up about 20 years ago and that I basically never look at anymore. If I come to a website and I suspect that a company might be sending me spam, or if they have a piece of content that gives me some feeling that I might get a lot of sales or marketing follow-up that I don't want, then I'm going to give them the Hotmail address, because I don't perceive the value that I'm going to be receiving to be equal to what I'm giving away to them. And basically, if something's valuable to you, then why wouldn't you want to receive it in your main email address that you check, every 5 seconds on your phone? And then, so this is an example of a pop-up on a website. It's a pretty nicely designed pop-up. It has a good color scheme. It's got good design. Most people, one of the best ways to capture email addresses is to use a pop-up on your website. And this is actually a lot better than a lot of newsletter sign-up forms that I see, because it actually gives context. But what you see is different from what your customer sees. So while you might see that nicely designed pop-up, your customer sees, your customer sees this pop-up, sign up for my boring newsletter. I don't really want to have anything to offer you, but I want to spam you every now and then. So that's why it's important.
Sorry, have you guys ever A/B tested this and actually set this one up? Because I'm curious if this one, the first time I read this and we were all going through the slides, this was great. I thought this was hilarious. And I'm super interested to see if this is so bad that it'll actually have the opposite effect and people will actually sign up for it. Because I saw it, I was like, I'm just interested to see what you said now.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt we would be able to A/B test this, but it's definitely interesting. I mean, this is the kind of thing that could go viral, and you never know. You might get a lot more out of it than you would expect. Yeah, so this I mean, even this boring newsletter pop-up provides a lot more context than this one right here. So never make a sign up form that looks like this. I mean, the thing that I don't like about this is it doesn't provide any context. It doesn't tell the frequency of the emails that you'd be receiving. It doesn't tell, even, what type of content you can expect to receive. So definitely try to avoid having a pop-up like this that doesn't provide any context whatsoever. So I'm going to go into an example of a sign-up form that I like a lot. One of my favorite authors is a guy by the name of Dan Pink. He's written several books and given a TED Talk. And the reason I wanted to show him his pop-up is because on his website and in all of his emails that he sends out, he delivers value pretty much better than anybody I know. And on the next slide, if we break this down a little bit further, so very first thing that he mentions is the frequency of the email. So you know exactly what to expect. You'll get the email every other Tuesday. I've been a subscriber of his for I think about a year now, and without fail, every other Tuesday I can always expect to get one of his emails in my inbox. Another thing that I like is he says that he has more than 170,000 subscribers. If he has that many subscribers, then chances are his emails are pretty valuable. Like they've got to be interesting to have that many people subscribe. So he talks about how many people are currently receiving his newsletter. He explains and outlines exactly what you can expect to receive. So he always has just two pieces of the email. One is the Pinkcast, which is just a short video about a cool tip he's found about working smarter or living better, and one more thing, which is a cool idea that he thought was worth sharing. And then he also doesn't ask for too much information. So I'd say that for a newsletter sign up form like this, you generally wouldn't want to ask for much more than two pieces of information, whether it's the name and email address, or maybe a name, email address and a phone number like Josh is going to get to in a moment here. Definitely try to limit the amount of fields that you ask for, because the more that you ask for, the less likely people will be to actually sign up. And then lastly, he also says he has a link. If you go back to the last slide for just 1 second, he has a link at the very bottom to read the latest newsletter. So this is actually an idea that I really like that a lot of people don't really use is if you're not completely sold on what type of content you're going to be getting, if you don't know if you want to give away your email address to sign up for a newsletter, they give an example of the type of content that they can expect. So show a link to your previous newsletter so you can give them an idea of what they can expect to receive in future newsletters. And then if you go to the next slide here, so this is his pop-up form. So the first one I showed you was his actual newsletter sign-up page. This is his pop-up form. And one thing that I like about this is he's very consistent with everything that he shows. So he has a lot of the same wording. He sets the same expectations on both his pop-up and his newsletter form. A lot of websites that have a separate pop-up from their newsletter subscription page, they don't always do this. So it's not always clear to the user if you're going to be receiving the same thing. Like, is this newsletter the same thing as the newsletter that you just saw on a different page? So he uses all of the same words and asks for the same information on both his pop-up and his sign-up page. And then on the next slide here, so basically if you deliver value up front on your website, you'll be more likely to convert somebody to a subscriber. And then if you keep delivering value, you'll be more likely to retain them. Like I mentioned earlier, all it takes is one bad email or one bad experience for somebody to unsubscribe and, call it quits. So next is a couple of examples of some companies that I really like that deliver value up front. So I'm a huge fan of interactive content. We're going to be testing some interactive content here at Klaviyo in the next several months. Calculators is a great example. It tends to not only rank really well for SEO purposes, but it's a great way to deliver value up front. You provide something to your users and then you can capture something in return on the back end. Another example I really like is online quizzes. So on the next slide, if you take this entrepreneur quiz, he talks about what type of entrepreneur are you. Not only do you get to capture the data that these people are inputting, but you also give them an opportunity to enter their email to see some results. There's a bunch of free free and paid tools that offer these types of quizzes and calculators, but yeah, I mean, these are definitely great ways to kind of capture a little bit of information, deliver value up front, and then hopefully get the email on the back end. A couple other examples of value include, things like premium content. So I feel like everybody and their grandmother does this with ebooks, white papers. any type of premium content that's gated. Discounts and coupons that they can use right away before first purchase. That's a great way to deliver value up front. Calculators or personalized recommendations like those that you would get in a quiz, free shipping, contests and giveaways, a free gift if they sign up for your newsletter, and a lot more as well. And then I like to think of the information that you ask from your visitors as a form of currency. Basically, they're not going to give up their email address or their phone number without receiving something that they perceive as equal or greater value in return. I'd say that it's generally best to deliver value up front and then ask them to pay later. I don't usually like gating content and then having them give their email first before they can receive the content. But think of it kind of like eating at a nice restaurant. Like you generally don't pay until after you've finished your meal. And yeah, with that, we'll go to Josh.
Yeah, real quick, Josh, before you get started here. So we had a question from Morgan that actually is now sparking a question that I have as well. But I wanted to get your take on. So obviously, we're talking about growing the list in Q4, so you can leverage it for Q1. Some people like to use like a cheat code and just buy a list. I have a question. What are your thoughts on buying lists immediately before I even let you answer that? I'm going to tell you, I personally hate it. But what are your thoughts on buying lists? And then how often do you, to Morgan's question, how often do you like clean your list? So where you go through and just delete a bunch of people because they're just simply not responding?
As far as buying lists goes, that's absolutely not. I'm hugely against purchase lists just because I get so many spam emails every day that I've never signed up for. I know that Klaviyo's terms of service actually explicitly prohibit uploading purchase lists. If we find that people upload purchase lists, we don't allow them to use the platform. So definitely no against purchase lists. I'd say that was an effective tactic in 2005. If you're still doing that in 2019, then you should really be reevaluating that practice. And then the second question was, how often do we clean lists? I would say about once a month. I'd say it largely depends on how frequently you send. If you're only sending a newsletter once a month, you might want to do it once a quarter. If you're sending emails, several a week or once a week, then I would say about once a month would be good to kind of reevaluate, take a step back. Also take a look at what content's resonating, what content's not, and then change things up with your email strategy appropriately.
All right, Josh, you're
awesome.
Up.
Cool. So yeah, I'm going to build a little bit on some of what Chris was talking about in terms of list building and some of the tactics that you can take there. So when I think about Q4, like we're in the thick of it now, there's two types of conversions that we should all be most focused on, whether you're selling online or whether you're more of a SaaS company or a B2B company or a straight up e-commerce company. There's two types of conversions you should be thinking about. Obviously, purchase is super important. That's kind of the whole point of the holiday shopping season. But opt-in is probably for the long term of your business even more important, right? Because that's actually what sets you up for success in 2020, right? If you're spending money to drive traffic to your website, right, you want to be converting as many of those people into subscribers as possible. That way you have a means to drive them back to your site later when you're introducing new products, you're launching retargeting campaigns, you're sending out new things via email, right? Not everyone's going to be ready to buy today, but the fact that they've come to your site in the first place makes them a great long-term prospect for your business. So, I think everything Chris said is completely valid. And I think anything that I would say or Andrew would say or any of us would say as marketers is completely valid about how you should market your business. But I'd like to actually talk to normal shoppers, normal people about what will get them to opt in. What are they looking for how they're hoping to engage with brands? So we went out earlier this year and we talked to 500 online shoppers to really understand, like, hey, are we crazy or do these things work? Is this what people actually want? And what we found, to Chris's point, is that 89% of people will actually opt in for a discount, right? They'll opt into your email list or some other list in exchange for something of value. And the discount is the most impactful of all of these things. but it's certainly not the only option. Free shipping also super popular. 56% of shoppers said they'd opt in for free shipping. 42%, 41.25% said they'd just opt in if they like your brand, if they want to stay informed. And then it's interesting to look at, and maybe it was because it's a consumer market, the lowest on the list was actually accessing free content like a guide or a downloadable asset. So some of the ways to do that, and Chris showed a couple of examples here. Here are some that I really like across a few different categories. So the one on the top left here is actually just a really nice welcome pop-up that one of our customers is using. And the thing I really like about this is it's not offering anything, but what it is doing, it's giving you that value message like Chris talked about, why you should join the list, and it's doing it in a very warm and engaging and brand forward way. In the middle, you see what we call a spin to win campaign. This is sort of a gamified way for someone to win one of a bunch of different types of discounts. These are actually our top performing pop-ups, are this spin to win thing. Not always the best quality, to be honest, but they, for certain types of businesses, really, really powerful. And then you can do your very basic get 15% off to join our email list. That also works really, really well.
So the spin to win one, I'm interested here because I come across this one all the time, and it's funny because I'll get a pop-up and I have a couple of tools that'll tell me what people are using, and I'll look it up and I go, oh, they're using Privy. But the spin to win one is the only one where it shows up. I don't have to look. I know that it's you guys. And is it so it's really one of your top performers?
Yeah, it really is. It is, certainly for like a one size fits all sort of thing where you're targeting your entire audience with it. They perform really well from a conversion rate standpoint. You do get a little bit more junk in there as well. Maybe that's someone trying to enter multiple email addresses. Maybe that's people who will never actually be your customers, but it really nets out. It really nets out positive. And the secret sauce is that you can control exactly how often each discount comes up, right? So if you want to 95% of the time say you're going to get that 12% discount, you can totally control that. So you're not giving away too much all the time. But they really do work shockingly well.
That's hilarious. It's like a rigged Vegas game. That's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah. So and you look at those, and those campaigns are all they are all focused on gathering an email address, right? Because today email is still king for consumers. Right? In that same survey, 52% of the shoppers said that it's their number one choice for hearing from brands that they like, and 80% of shoppers were already getting emails from brands that they like. Right? That's 30 points higher than the next closest channel, which happened to be organic social. And I think as marketers, we all understand there's a lot of challenges with organic social. You don't control whether the people who like your page or follow you are actually going to see that message. So email is still king today. And it's good for the widest variety of messages, right? Like people are willing, we've been doing email for a long time, right? Everyone likes to pronounce it dead. Like it was pronounced dead in 99 and in 2001. And, when Facebook pages came around and when Facebook acquired WhatsApp, and millennials will never use it. They didn't have jobs at the time. They didn't need email, right? Email is still incredibly powerful, right? It works for brand message. It works for product announcements, for sales and offers and loyalty programs. Like everything under the sun can be done via email. And people are open to getting more email than you might expect, right? Like weekly, monthly, behavioral based. Like people have a pretty good system for how they want to handle email from a brand. And it still works really, really, really well. But it's not only about email, right? So when you start thinking about 2020 and how are you growing your list, it really needs to be about more than just email, right? Like how are you growing that Facebook Messenger audience? Even more importantly, how are you growing that SMS audience? So, in this same survey we looked at, and it turns out 47% of shoppers are at least somewhat likely to opt into SMS in the next year, right? I think it's taken a while. We've been talking about text message marketing for years now, but people are kind of getting there now. maybe not everyone, but it's a really highly engaged group. And even on the messenger side, 34% of shoppers said, that they would consider opting in the next year. So we're seeing some momentum here. And the nice part is the same tactics can be applied that you're using to grow your list, to grow your email list, that you can use to grow your SMS list or your Facebook Messenger list. So, the examples that I showed a minute ago are really great for like a catch-all first visit to the website. But once you start knowing things about people, you can actually be a lot more targeted with your messages, right? So whether that's driving people back to your site or after they've already joined your list, right? If they're already on your list, say, hey, confirm your email, join our SMS list, get another 10% off to get text alerts from us. Or if you want to send that message in an email, right, you can target based on the tracking link in your email and only show it to your existing subscribers, right, to continuously build that profile. Or you can certainly combine it up front, right? So like Facebook Messenger, it works a little bit differently on the opt-in. So you can set it up so that there's just a simple checkbox. You check the Messenger box, you enter your email address, you hit subscribe, and you're on both lists, right? So all of these things, and one important caveat here is like just because you have someone's phone number doesn't mean they've opted into SMS, right? So you need to be getting explicit opt-in permission across these different channels. And I think what we see oftentimes is like, if you go, especially to like a brand new Shopify merchant, you might see 75 different opt-ins happening all at the same time, right? Classic case of marketers ruining everything. So it's really important to not do this all at once, or at least to do it in an integrated fashion. And then once you have these things, right? Once you have that, Messenger kind of flows over directly as an opt-in into like Octane or whoever you're using for that. SMS, similar to email, right? You can sync this over, as I mentioned, like Privy is launching an SMS tool ourselves, and in the coming weeks. Klaviyo just announced theirs. Integrations like Postscript and Attentive, and there are others, right? You capture that information with a tool like Privy and you sync it wherever it needs to go to make sure you're having really compliant opt-ins, right? And we're seeing that SMS is best for certain kinds of messages, right? In that same study, it's like people want, they don't want a newsletter via SMS, but they will take a special offer. They'll take confirmation information. They'll even take cart reminders, right? So those are weekly or behavior-based. And then on the Messenger side, it's a little earlier, like mostly people want it to be behavior-based. So again, cart reminders and confirmations. People are really starting to warm to this. And the cool thing is, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but the people who will opt into your Messenger or SMS, the open and response rates are incredibly high, right? So it's a smaller audience, but it's a very engaged one.
Yeah. So just to kind of piggyback on this, because to me, what I'm kind of seeing at least the industry, I guess you could say, is going into, it's similar to that whole like, I'm gonna say it, but that whole like Gary Vee approach, which is like, sometimes I love them, sometimes I can't stand them, but it's basically like, be everywhere that you can. So it's kind of like a real estate play. And if you think about it, like, yeah, I definitely don't think email's dying. I agree. They say email's dying forever. It's not dying. It's not going anywhere. It still has some of the best returns, but people are starting to get other options of communication, right? They are getting SMS. They are getting Messenger. Believe it or not, I actually have a handful of clients that are doing shockingly well with direct mail, where we actually just trigger like personalized direct mail going out, and they'd prefer to get it that way. It's not about being everywhere so that you can bombard one person. It's about being everywhere so that whatever that person prefers that form of communication to be, you're there. So some people might like Messenger, some people may hate it, but they might like SMS, they might like email. So to me, I'm learning a little bit more now that it's really just kind of, you want to be everywhere just so that that person can pick and choose how they want to be contacted.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think, as you build out workflows in different places, I think it falls on you as a business owner, as a marketer, to be a little more customer conscious about, am I going to send the same message to 3 different channels, or do I need to really segment my list, right? Do I set a priority level? So if someone's on all of my lists, where am I reaching them, instead of like, oh, I got a notification, I got a text message, and I got an email. Like that's super annoying, even from brands you like. So I think the challenge is, that sort of falls on us to not do that. But to your point, it's really all about putting your customer first.
Yeah.
So just to sum up, good opportunity to combine your list growth tactics to grow all of those lists. You can use offers to generate the most interest, but you do have other options. And again, like start now. There's no reason to wait on this stuff. Doesn't cost a lot of money to get going, if any money to get going. And every contact you get is a potential customer down the road.
Beautiful. So before we get into the new sexy chatbots, let Naya take over here. I have a question from Mark, and this one I'm gonna believe is probably catered to both you, Josh and Chris. So he said, how do you deal with people marking your emails as spam, even though it's totally legitimate and offers something of value, such as tips, and isn't pushing them to buy anything?
There's other than it feeling crappy, there's not much you can do about it. I think you want to be very conscious that you're not violating any spam laws. If you're acting on the up and up, every time we send out an email blast, you get a certain number of unsubscribes. You might get a couple spam reports, but I think as long as you have a good solid opt-out system in place, if someone marks it as spam and doesn't opt out, like make sure you're opting out, make sure you're being responsive. I think it has to be very reactive. And certainly if there are emails you're sending that are getting more spam reports than others, like really think about the content that's in those and figure out like how you might be able to avoid that going forward. But also I would say like don't take it personal. Like sometimes to the average person, hitting the this is spam is easier than an unsubscribe. Like they're not marketers. They're not thinking about it the way we are. So don't get too upset. Just do your best to not violate the laws.
Chris, any comments on that before we move on?
I would definitely agree with all that. Another thing I would say is that if you're getting certain spam complaints, aside from like what Josh mentioned with the, looking at the content of the emails, if a certain email campaign gets more spam complaints than others, also just take a look at the source of the contact. If you notice that a lot of contacts from a particular source tend to be flagging stuff as spam, then you might want to reevaluate those channels. Like if you're doing a lot of paid advertising and those people are just, coming in from Google Ads, for example, and then signing up, and then a few campaigns later they're flagging it as spam, then you might want to reevaluate that. I would say try to look for trends in terms of where they're coming from, what pages they're looking at, how long they've been around, and that might give you some insight as well.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, what I would say too is that you got to think about how often are you sending emails? Because if you're only sending them every couple of months, people may forget who you are. They may have forgotten that they signed up for you, and then they're just going to spam you. Or look at I agree with what Josh said about the brand or about the content of it, but I also think it would be about the branding of it. So if you're using the same color scheme, you're using the same look and feel every single time, they're going to know it's you when it's coming. But if you're consistently changing up your email, or it's kind of bland and flat and it's kind of boring looking, or even if you're, flipping colors around every time, people aren't going to know who you are. I think some of the biggest issues we have as marketers is being one of those, like, we know too much. So like when I get hit with a retargeting ad, instead of judging the product, I judge the ad. Like it's a curse and a burden, I guess. But it's the same thing with spam. Like you got to remember, the average consumer, if they're on their phone, the unsubscribe button's really easy. But if they're not, it's relatively close to the same spam button in some cases. So to them, they don't care as long as they don't get the email anymore. So I would agree with just don't let it hurt your feelings. But we will let Naya take over now and get us into the new sexy, fun chatbots that everyone wants to be doing, but for some reason, not enough people are doing.
Thanks so much, Andrew. I think a lot of people are not doing that because it just feels a lot complicated if you have to sit down and build flows and think about, what should be the customer journey be? What should be the customer experience be? How do I write my micro copy? I think that's what kind of scares a lot of people. And obviously this the paradigm of going like multi-channel. So essentially like what I want to kind of, talk about today, building in on from Josh's points about the customer actually wanting to go everywhere, and what we've been discussing about, right? Like you shouldn't really try to spam your users or like try to overload the users, right? Like the best kind of marketing is when the customer comes to you, and that's where like chat really has has a lot of potential to kind of build a more stronger brand and customer relationship. Um, so like just if we were to just take a pause and like kind of think about how do we kind of interact on a day-to-day basis with our friends or our family, it's just a couple of apps, right? It's it's primarily a WhatsApp or a iMessage. In certain markets it's Messenger. Some would use a Twitter to kind of just build up and communicate with their community. And then like in terms of how are we discovering content is obviously via like the core top apps, so Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And what happens there is that when somebody and also like as per stat by BCG, like 80% of new internet users who are actually coming online, and they're going straight to social, right? They're straight away going to these apps. They're no more going to like a Google first or or website, right? These are specifically very mobile first users. And what happens is when they see and they kind of discover a product, obviously, that's one option, that they would go to the website to find out more, but sometimes they'll also have like questions. Um, so for example, just like in last holiday season, there were, like 2 in 3 people kind of messaged a brand. Sorry, could you go ahead over the next slide?
Yep, gotcha. Sorry.
Yeah, so just like so just in terms of mentioning about it's just not the holiday season, happens throughout the year. People may message a brand because they saw an ad and they are kind of interested to learn more about the product. Maybe they want to know if this is like vegan, or do you ship to an next place, or and also to kind of get an instant response in any time, right? That's what the messaging ecosystem kind of provides, that capability, much like how you'd go in a store and have, you can just walk over to a retail sales assistant and ask a question, right? And or maybe if you're just passing by and you look at something and you would just go and ask questions and not maybe buy something, but that definitely a good experience with a with a sales assistant kind of helps you build up, kind of a good impression about the brand, right? Or kind of a memorability about the brand. It's also, being chat, it also gives you an easy way to be able to, ask questions and then, kind of just go ahead and like buy a product. There's a seamlessness of digital commerce. And last is obviously, being able to get like personalized advice. People also tend to message a brand sometimes, if they want to, sorry, I'm still in the last. Cool. So yeah, no. And as per, so this stats are actually from a Facebook study. People who tend to like message a brand, they actually also tend to spend 7% higher, and like 50% of those people then kind of want to spend more in their future purchases. Next slide. So I predominantly want to cover, because Josh has already covered in terms of how you can have plugins and how you can kind of get people to sign up for your list via pop-ups. But there are also other ways that you could do it, right? So for example, if you're running a social media ad or maybe even an organic post, you have the option to actually add a button, which is a send message button, so that triggers the customer if they have questions to kind of really reach out to you and ask the questions that they have. You have the option to actually automate replies to comments. So if somebody's posting something that is like okay, I love this, so you can actually send them a message, hey, if you loved our product, would you like to learn more, or like subscribe to our list. And same way, let's say if somebody's you could run similar kind of automations on Twitter as well, which is not essentially about like replying to that, but you can actually send them a DM if somebody retweets your post. The core obviously here is that you should, because it's messaging, people want to have an interactive experience. So if you are kind of building bots, you should definitely look at storytelling. The other good option is that these a lot of these customers would have their, their email and their phone numbers public, so that when they interact with their page, you can automatically capture their, their Facebook emails or their Twitter emails, which definitely works a lot, especially if you want to do like retargeting ads. So you have more verified profiles of the same users on those accounts. Next slide. There's also option to actually build your messaging list from search. So essentially, Google gives you an option in your business page listing to enable send a message. Now here you can obviously also add in your, your messenger link, or say if you have like a WhatsApp link, you can also add that. What that would do is then when, if customers have a question, they will directly be able to send you a message. And, again, you can then kind of build the conversation and collect their email or their number. Additionally, Apple also offers similar functionalities like Messenger for business chat. And the good part is that, it gives a lot of visibility for customers to be able to find your brand, or, if they search something in Siri or they ask something in Siri, they'll be able to get it. They'll also get it if they search that in Spotlight. So that kind of gives very natural kind of ways to start a conversation. Even Google has a similar functionality with Google Messages or Google Assistant in Android phones. So those are other means that you can, trigger a conversation and then build your customer relationship from there. The last is obviously you can do that on your own website. There's definitely pop-ups, but you could also embed business chat buttons. This is basically a very small prompt which you can add, say, onto your product pages, onto your consideration pages, so that if people have kind of a question, they can come on board and speak to you, and you can kind of customize this, right? So if you want to redirect customers to an iMessage, you could do that. If you want to do that on a WhatsApp or a Messenger, that's possible as well. The other option is actually to have like small a chat box or a small chat prompt. Now you could use this in multiple ways. If you have like a promotional offer, or let's say a new sale coming up, or maybe you've just launched a product collection, or you have like an influencer video using your product, you can very subtly prompt this. This does not interrupt with their overall website experience, and gives them the ability to kind of engage with it. And lastly, you can also kind of embed chat prompts on your blog, or say your product pages or your FAQ pages, again giving like the customers the ability to actually come and start interacting with you and starting feeling like you are almost like a friend, being there to assist them at every touch point. Next slide. So a couple of ways that you could do it. Obviously, you could have a checkbox for the customers to opt in, when they are adding a product in cart. But if you wanted to kind of engage with them, a couple of ways is to, you could give out giveaways, right? So it could be, let's say, a free sample of your product, or kind of like a video to kind of see how to use the product. You can also do one-on-one offers. So for example, like 11/11, right? So you buy one and you get one for your friend, or like a date night offer where like two people could come and get a discount for to come and like buy a product together. You could obviously do that by prompting and asking them questions, giving them the ability to ask you questions. You could share product tips. So for example, if you're like a beauty brand, you can share like makeup tutorials, or if you're like a fashion brand, you can share tutorials in terms of like how to wear a particular product, right, which they've either bought or maybe they were considering. That kind of helps them kind of explore and interact more with you. You could also do like lucky weekly draws. So for example, you could be like, hey, okay, if you send us a message every Sunday, we'll have like a sweet deal for you, and it could be a 10% off, it could be a randomized offer. You could definitely define that. And last but not the least, you could play out like BuzzFeed like quizzes, related to your product category, so that customers kind of get to engage with the brand, but also kind of you're also able to get to know your customer better. Next slide. So there are a couple of ways that you could do it. One is that you can definitely build chatbots. Keep your chatbots simple. If they're too long, too many flows, it can take a lot of time. It can get complex to go back and forth. So keep them very simple when you're doing it for, especially for lead gen, and keep them very interactive. Ideally, you should try and do a kind of storytelling, so that it's fun. Use GIFs, use like videos. Make characters if you have, you can maybe make like small games, for them to kind of pick up things. The other option is when you are kind of thinking of chat, it's also important to not just automate everything, because the reason why people prefer to go and chat with a brand is because they want to learn more about the brand, get like actual attention. So you should also embed in certain elements so that if they actually do come and are seriously interested in your product and your consideration phase, you can actually answer them, their questions. So being there for what your customers' needs are is the best form of marketing. And ultimately, so you could use tools like Dialogflow, with .ai to kind of automate your reply. So you could train it to say, okay, if my customer says something like this, reply with this. There's also a third element that you should kind of look at is to be actually have like a live chat enabled as well, so that you're actually engaging and interacting one-on-one with your customers. Next slide. So just as a sum up, there are a couple of things that you should remember. So one is that you should always try to offer value and encourage them to message you first, rather than trying to send them too many marketing automations, all the time, or sequence messages and stuff. A lot of marketers did that, back in 2018, 2017, and that's just resulted in the platforms getting stricter and stricter. You would get banned, right? So if a lot of customers, much like the email, if they are marking you as spam or like blocking your messaging page, you'll ultimately get banned. So be careful about how you do it, and you should also look at building an experience which is a combination of a human and bot, so that at any time that a customer is actually wanting to learn more about your products or your brand, you are there to kind of help them out. And not really focus on building a bot, for building a funnel, right? So not just trying to just be like, okay, if you go from here to an X another point and then another point, just don't increase the steps. As I mentioned earlier, it's always bots are good for simpler queries, and more direct action touch points. And I see a lot of people kind of build a full flow of like multiple steps and multiple conditions for FAQs, when it's like a very simple query about like, where's my order, right? And that you can automate to kind of help them solve the system and get the answers to those things. So that comes in like being able to answer in context. The other point is that you should always obviously make sure that you are sending all your contacts back to your your CRM. You're segmenting them by by the interactions they've had, the promotions that they're interacting with, the tags that they're interacting with, the channels they are coming in from, and then accordingly create your marketing or like sponsored messaging to them, and obviously don't go blasting them across all the channels. And the last piece is really like, a lot of people, when they build bots, they want to try and make it like sound very human in terms of the copy. It actually confuses a lot of people, because then they don't know if I'm interacting with a bot or with a human. So essentially try and keep the two slightly different, so it's easy for the user to understand.
Nice. It's funny, like with bots, what I've noticed, and I was a victim of it too, where when it first started coming out, I had the same issue that I believe most people do, which is like, you see it and you're like, okay, that's like some crazy AI stuff. There's no way I'm gonna be able to figure that out. That's over my head. And then it just kind of kept like, they kept pushing it, and I kept hearing more and more about it. I was like, all right, I got to sit down and I got to try this. And it was amazing that you can actually set up like a semi-decent flow in like less than a day and really understand how everything works. It's not nearly as complicated as it kind of is perceived to be, I would say. And it's amazing. I actually have a handful of sellers who have actually gotten their bots so built out and so in depth with ideally like the FAQs, like you had mentioned, that it's actually reduced their overhead and the amount of customer service that they actually needed, because now it's just like you ever get to that situation where a lot of sellers are just kind of like, man, like if these customers would just read what's on the website, I wouldn't have to answer all these questions. But if you can put that into a bot, they are going to ask you, but your bot's going to answer it for you. So there's a lot of stuff out there that people don't realize. Like, it's not as hard as people assume it is. In fact, it's pretty easy. And it's just a conversational, like, easy thing to do, where you can just set up all the basic FAQs and you can set up the easy bots that are really easy wins. And then, of course, there's a lot of upsell opportunity too. And if you're having issues with spam, or you're having trouble with, people not opening emails, the open rates and the click rates on bots are crazy. Like, the statistics I first read, I was like, there's no way that's right. And then I started playing with it and I was like, oh crap, like, it is right. Like, people are actually opening this. Of course, Facebook's charging you now to like send out a one-off post and all that stuff. It's a different story, because obviously, once again, marketers ruined it. But it's still such a new thing that I find that sellers who actually are open to having a bot really come out ahead, because it's just still on the cusp of like, innovation a little bit right now.
Yeah, so I think like in general, what we've seen is that the best kind of functionality works when it's a combination of bot and a human, because every time if you have to engage with something that is automated, and that you actually came to kind of learn more or build understand more about the product, but you're essentially getting to talk to a bot, and sometimes bots and flows can get like really tricky, in the sense that they might not be able to answer in questions in context, or it might just be a lengthy flow. And, much like the website, people may make the flow too much, with too many branches, then it gets a bit complicated. So what we've seen essentially is that you should kind of have a play, in terms of combining a human assisted experience with like a bot experience, and use automations where, for functionalities, and it's very easy to actually set up the automations, but you should not just spam up, like set up automation for everything, right? So you should just try and map out like, okay, what are the questions where automations can really help fix, right? So obviously things like shipping, being able to like just get a coupon, get a discount, those things are good. But if it's actually, a customer is actually in consideration, and if they are coming and they're messaging you, which is the reason why like all these platforms are going so much in popularity, is because customers actually want to talk to brands, which has been missing in the digital world. Is actually to be able to kind of map that out with a good customer experience. And you could treat it almost like sending an email, but it's like you can actually have like a personal communication with the brand. Obviously, It means that you would have to probably invest a few more, like probably have like one person kind of handle it, but still better, because now you're getting to know your customers personally.
Yeah, when I first started out, I equated it a lot to automated emails. They're like triggered. You get a subscriber. They're triggered by something a consumer does, and then it sends the information out, and you can make it say whatever you want. When we first set it up, it was like, this is just like automated emails. There's like no real difference except for the fact that it's on a completely different platform. But still, like, chatbots are still one of those things where I'm just like, I can't believe not everyone has picked this up yet and have started to use it. It doesn't always have to be on Facebook Messenger. It can be elsewhere, like on your site, like you mentioned. But so we chewed off everyone's ear for a full hour, so that was awesome. So of course, obviously, I really appreciate everyone who joined in. I will have the slides out. I will have a recording out in the next couple of days after we clean it up and stuff, and then it'll go up on YouTube and all that, and we'll email it out. But if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to contact anyone here. I will say sellerschoice.digital, or you can just email me at andrew@sellerschoice.digital. Of course, we're on every social platform ever that you need us to be on, so feel free to reach us there if you have any questions. And then why don't we let Josh, Chris, and Naya tell us all the other places that they can kick us off. So let's work our way backwards this time. So Naya, I want you to tell us how everyone can reach you.
So I'm reachable on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and all places. My handle is the same. It's Nyha, NYHASHREE. And on my email, I'm nyha@jumper.ai.
Perfect. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, I'm just josh@privy.com, and you can always hit us up and sign up for a free trial at privy.com.
Last but not least, Chris.
And feel free to send me an email at chris.newton@klaviyo.com, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Just search Google Chris Newton Klaviyo and you should be able to find me. And yeah, if you're interested in trying Klaviyo, if you're not using it already, we offer Klaviyo for free to everyone up to 250 contacts. So feel free to give us a try.
Beautiful. Thank you all so much. That was awesome. And again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out, and make sure that you guys look into all of the, obviously, the awesome platforms that joined us today. And at bare minimum, my suggestion, which is how we actually came up with this idea, is go follow all of them on their social media, because they all do an awesome job at marketing themselves, which you would hope since they're all marketing. But either way, I would definitely suggest go check them all out on social and everything too. But thank you all. Good luck in the final month and a half of Q4, and good luck in Q1. Hopefully we will see you guys next time in the next webinar, but have a good one, and thanks again.
Hey, do you like this e-com content? Sign up for the Sellers Post newsletter for more e-commerce content straight to your inbox, or follow us on social with the links below. Thanks for watching.